This week's Torah portion begins with one of the most famous verses in the whole of the 5 books of Moses. The words of which are actually, I was just looking, on top of our ark here, the ark that houses the Torah here at Bet Alef. It says, just on the light, Ve'asu li mikdash, ve'shachanti betocham. God says to Moses, let them make me a holy place, that I might dwell within. Let them create sacred space, that I might dwell among them. Let them create a holy container, that I might dwell within them. And then the Parshat, the portion continues, laying out the IKEA plan on how to build a tabernacle in the wilderness. A little less interesting, unless you're a big fan of reading IKEA plans. But these first few verses are really critical. And we learn here that key to building a sacred space, key to building a sanctuary, is how God directs Moses to ask each and every individual member of the traveling tribes of Israel to come forth and bring a gift. Make a donation, a Terumah, which actually is the name of the Torah portion this week. Make a donation, bring a gift from their own personal possessions, from the materials they possess, so that whatever they bring can be incorporated into the construction of the tabernacle. This way, every single individual energies will be melded into the tapestry of this sacred space that is being created on behalf of the community. Everybody will have a part in it, be represented in it. And that construction will stand at the center of this traveling community. Not only just at the center, but this container will represent what this community stands for in the world. It will define its spiritual path forevermore. It will make a statement as to why this community exists. And I believe from that point forward, until our days, this is still the case. We place our Torah, we place our ark at the very center of our community, and it defines us. And it is just as portable today as it was 3,500 years ago. We have traveled with arks and Torahs the world over. And it still is the pillar at the center of our communities. And the way this is created, the way this is built in the Torah is a remarkable statement of affirming the oneness of all of us. Now, my daughter was in a play recently, which actually just ended last weekend, named Quilters. It was a very, very interesting play, and she was awesome in it. And it's not because it's my daughter. Maybe. But no, she really was. The play is interesting because it's a series of about, 10 to 12 little scenes, little vignettes that are tracing different moments of the life of women, pioneers, at the time of the settlements of the West, of the conquest of the West. And each scene, it's called Quilters because each scene, there is the central character who is the mother. And with each scene, each vignette that describes a specific moment in that life, she weaves together, she quilts together a little square, a little quilted square that represents that part of the story. And as the story goes on, and as the other little vignettes are expressed through those different acts, then more squares are coming to life, representing each story. What I liked about this was that not only were the stories and the quilts representing the good times that they had, the times of celebration, the times of joy, but they also wear what she calls in the play shadow blocks or shadow squares that depicted the harsh times that were also part of the experience of those days, and they were really harsh times. I mean, pioneers who came west and had nothing, had to create everything from nothing, and their life was really, really, really hard. And to paint also the women's side of it was really enlightening. So those shadow squares, talk about the great loss and the great tragedies that these women experienced throughout their lives. And the play goes on, and she is weaving together the great quilts of her life. And she says actually it took 25 years for her to take all of those little squares of all of those stories and quilt them together as one magnificent, giant quilt, in the middle of which is a bigger square that has a tree of life. It's really remarkable. And this major quilt is not only all her life and all her experiences put into pictures, but it's also her legacy. It's what she is giving her daughters and asking them to share it with their daughters after that. I feel that the tabernacle, and not looking at the tabernacle as that one structure back in the days in the middle of the desert, but that sacred community that is created through that medium, this tabernacle of us is the quilt of the Jewish people. All of our communities are such quilts. And to create this kind of sacred community together, this kind of true community together, then we, all of us, are asked to come forth and bring their gift, their Terumah, their little piece of fabric. The colorful ways of their beings, their unique patterns of their own piece of the quilt. And we together as a community get to weave all of those together as one communal tapestry, as one communal quilt. But what that means, if we follow the story, is that it means that we bring to this community not only the bright, shiny, colorful squares of our experiencing here and in our lives, but also we have to bring the shadow squares. We have to bring both the moments of sheer joy and deep communal experience here, as much as we have to bring those moments of dissonance, of discord, of maybe conflict that we've experienced even within these walls, even within this community. Why? Because only then can we really weave a quilt that is representative of the whole of who we are. We can't leave one or two squares out of the quilt. We can't tell those who come within these walls that their gift is not welcomed, that who they are doesn't fit in what we are trying to weave together here. No. If we really want to be true to the teachings of the Torah, to the teachings of this community, then every square has to be taken into account. And we are blessed. I think we are blessed to have such a community that can do that. We are blessed because we create together this safe container, this tabernacle, this safe, sacred container into which we can practice facing both the light and the shadow, both the moment of sheer joy and the moment of discomfort. These moments where we say, no, I like this, but I don't like this. I'm going to go to this workshop, but that I don't want to be part of. I like that song, but that song doesn't help me. Whatever it is, we get to be here and to practice being in the presence of that which is exactly as it is, exactly as it presents itself. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to love everything that happens within this community. Of course not. It's not what we are asked to do. That would defeat what the quilt is trying to teach us. The quilt is trying to teach us that we need to work on ourselves in order to be present, but fully present, like a hineni. Here I am, whole and welcoming of everything. And I say it's a gift because once we get to really practice here, then we can take our learning into the world. Right here it's safe. It might feel less safe out there. We get to practice being with the entire tapestry of this community when we face the tapestry of our family dynamics on Thanksgiving dinner. That's so much harder. But you know what I mean? That's the blessing of this, because here it's open, and here it's forgiving, here it's welcoming, here it's like you're having challenges with that, you're facing your darkness. Yes, come, let's share, let's talk, let's put it on the table, let's see what happens with it. And then we can take it to Thanksgiving dinner. And then we can take it to our national conversation, where we have different tribes arguing different points, and they're all part of this magnificent quilt we call the United States of America. And we can't take the pieces of the tribes we don't like out of the quilt. That would make an incomplete quilt. That would not be representing all of it. So we learn here to listen to those voices that rub us wrong, that are against what we think, that are against what we believe. We seek to be able to grow in taking more and more and more different perspectives from places we were unfamiliar with before or uncomfortable with before. To walk in the shoes of others for a little while. That doesn't mean we're going to keep the shoes. Again, I'm not saying we need to keep the shoes, but I'm saying, can we feel into how they fit? Can we look at the world from that side of the quilt, not always on our side of the quilt? And then we can take it even globally, you know. Sometimes I talk to my wife, Amy. Well, I often talk to my wife, Amy, but sometimes I talk to my wife, Amy. About what's going on in Israel, and we've both lived in Israel for a long time, and we know the Israelis and how they think, and we don't always, in fact, rarely agree with what Israel is doing. And Amy always reminds me, Israel is like this drunken uncle. You know, the drunken uncle that you just can't fathom what his lifestyle is like. that you just have no compassion for his behavior. You know, the drunken uncle that still show up at family function and you just don't want to be in his presence. Sometimes that's how Israel feels. And she always reminds me that no matter what, he's still part of the family. He's still part of the family. He's still part of the quilt, the family quilt. Now there is another dimension of this teaching, obviously. It's in the Ve'asu li mikdash v'shacharti b'tochan, and I shall dwell within them. And the dimension is also the inner dimension. And it's the same thing, you know, the quilt of our being, the quilt of our life is also made up of dozens of different little squares, some shiny and colorful, and some shadow blocks. And the work is to weave them all into the tapestry of our life, to acknowledge them all as part of who we are, not to disown any of them, not to reject any of them, not to cut out any of them. You know, those we feel that if we were to put them in our quilt, we would no longer be lovable. We will no longer be acceptable. We will no longer be welcomed. And those little shadow squares, we tend to want to tear them from the quilt and throw them out. But all we're going to get is an unstable quilt, a not whole kind of quilt, a not finished kind of quilt. So this teaching, I think, is telling us that every voice within, every aspect of self, that even sometimes are in conflict with one another, are all there to bring a gift to us. And that gift they bring creates the tabernacle that is our inner space, our inner sacred space. And I think that if we as adults can really, really, really engage in doing this kind of work, and can really do our best to move past those parts of ourselves, those parts of others, those parts of the world that we cast aside, that we reject. If we can really do this work of integrating, of making whole, of truly practicing inclusiveness, if we can move ourselves to live from that place, that maybe we have a chance to maybe not stop, but diminish conflict, war for the next generation. And that, I think, is